The widow who refused to break, until love rode through her gates. They said Eliza McAllister was too old for second chances, too hardened by 15 years of loneliness to ever soften again. But when a bleeding stranger collapsed at her ranch gate under a storm-darkened Montana sky, everything she'd locked away came crashing back to life. What she didn't know was that saving him would unravel secrets, ignite passions she thought were dead, and force her to choose between the safety of solitude and the dangerous beauty of being seen again. Stay with me until the end. Like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The heat shimmered above the Montana plains like a living thing, waves of distortion bending the horizon until earth and sky bled together. July had arrived without mercy, scorching the grasslands to bronze and cracking the earth into jagged puzzle pieces that crunched beneath boot heels. But inside the sprawling ranch house at Iron Creek, Eliza McAllister felt nothing but the familiar chill that had settled in her bones 15 years ago, the day they'd lowered Samuel into the ground and left her to face the world alone. She stood at the kitchen window now, hands submerged in dishwater that had gone lukewarm, staring out at the land she'd built with her own sweat and stubbornness. The ranch stretched for acres in every direction, corrals repaired with her own hammer and nails, fences she'd mended 100 times over, cattle that wore her brand because she'd refused to let anyone tell her a woman couldn't run an empire from the dust. Iron Creek Ranch. The name alone commanded respect in 3 counties, but respect was a cold companion on nights when the house echoed with emptiness. Eliza was 58 now, though she felt both older and somehow ageless. Her hands were rough, calloused from labor that would have broken softer women. Her face bore the marks of sun and wind and tears she'd stopped shedding a decade ago. Silver threaded through dark hair she kept pinned back in a severe bun, practical, efficient, nothing wasted on vanity. The town of Crow's Nest, 12 miles south, had opinions about Eliza McAllister. They always had. Too proud, they whispered over coffee at Miller's General Store. Too difficult, too set in her ways. What does she expect at her age? The church ladies murmured behind gloved hands. A woman her years should accept what life's given her and be grateful for it. Eliza had stopped caring what they thought around the same time she'd stopped expecting kindness from a world that measured a woman's worth by whether she had a man beside her. She'd learned to armor herself in silence, in competence, in the fierce independence that made men uncomfortable and women envious. Let them talk. Words couldn't hurt someone who'd already survived the worst kind of breaking. She pulled her hands from the water and dried them on her apron, glancing at the clock above the stove. 4:30. The afternoon stretched ahead like all the others. Feed to distribute, horses to check, 100 small tasks that filled the hours between sunrise and the loneliness of another empty night. Outside, thunder rumbled low and distant. Eliza moved to the window again, this time looking north where bruised clouds were piling against the mountains. A summer storm building, the kind that brought more thunder than rain, but occasionally surprised you with a deluge that turned the creek into a roaring torrent overnight. The sky darkened as she watched, purple and deep gray swirling together like an old bruise. Lightning flickered somewhere beyond the far ridge. She was turning away, already calculating whether she needed to bring the horses into the barn when movement caught her eye. A rider. Eliza froze, squinting against the strange flat light that preceded the storm. The figure was perhaps a quarter-mile out, moving slowly, too slowly, across the open ground between the tree line and her property gate. Something was wrong. The way the rider swayed in the saddle, the horse's labored gait, the strange angle of the man's shoulders as if he were folding into himself. Eliza's heart kicked against her ribs. She'd lived alone long enough to know that unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. Out here, isolation was both protection and vulnerability. You were free from prying eyes, but help was miles away when trouble came calling. And trouble, she could see now with cold certainty, was exactly what approached her gate. The rider swayed again, more dramatically this time, and Eliza saw him grab for the saddle horn to keep from falling. Even from this distance, she could tell he was young, maybe 30 at most, and something about the desperation in his movements made her chest tighten. She should go inside, lock the doors, pretend she hadn't seen. Instead, Eliza McAllister untied her apron, reached for the rifle she kept by the door, and walked out into the gathering storm. Masim. The wind hit her the moment she stepped off the porch, hot and fierce, carrying the electric smell of coming rain. Dust devils spun across the yard. The few chickens that hadn't already sought shelter squawked and scattered as she strode toward the gate. The rider had reached the fence now. His horse, a sorrel gelding with lathered flanks, stood with its head hanging low, sides heaving. The man in the saddle lifted his head with visible effort, and Eliza's breath caught. Blood, dark and wet, spreading across the left side of his shirt. "Ma'am?" His voice was rough, barely audible over the rising wind. "Please, I can't." He swayed again, this time losing his grip entirely. Eliza watched in horror as he slid sideways out of the saddle, hitting the ground hard. She ran. Her boots kicked up dust as she covered the last 20 yards, rifle still gripped in one hand, her other hand already reaching for the gate latch. She shoved it open and dropped to her knees beside him. Up close, she could see he was even younger than she'd thought. Late 20s, maybe, with dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat and blood. His face was pale beneath several days' worth of stubble, lips cracked from sun and dehydration. But it was his eyes that caught her, gray-blue like winter sky, fever-bright with pain but still somehow aware. Still focused on her face with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Easy," Eliza said, the word coming out sharper than she'd intended. She set the rifle aside and pressed her hand against the wound in his side. He hissed through his teeth, body going rigid. "How long ago were you shot?" "Yesterday, maybe." He struggled to focus. "Rode through the night, didn't stop, couldn't stop." "Who's following you?" His eyes met hers again, and she saw the answer there before he spoke. Someone dangerous. "Please." His hand found her wrist, grip surprisingly strong for a man who'd just fallen off his horse. "Don't send me away. I'll work. I'll do anything. Just need a few days to heal, to figure out." Thunder cracked directly overhead, so loud Eliza felt it in her chest. The first fat drops of rain began to fall, leaving dark spots in the dust around them. She should send him away. Should get on her horse right now and ride to the sheriff in Crow's Nest. Let the law handle whatever mess this bleeding stranger had brought to her doorstep. But his fingers were still wrapped around her wrist, and the desperation in his eyes was a mirror of something she recognized. The look of someone who'd run out of options, out of strength, out of anywhere else to go. And Eliza McAllister, for all her armor and isolation and careful defenses, had never been able to turn away from something broken. "Can you stand?" she asked. "I can try." "Then try. House is 50 yards. Storm's going to hit hard, and I'm not dragging you through mud." She helped him to his feet, or rather, she braced him while he fought his way upright using sheer will and stubbornness that matched her own. He was tall, 6 feet at least, and heavier than he looked. Lean muscle and bone, nothing wasted, everything honed by hard work and harder living. He leaned against her more heavily than she'd expected, his arm draped across her shoulders, his breath coming in short gasps that told her the pain was worse than he wanted to admit. "The horse," he managed as they staggered toward the open gate. "I'll get him after. He's not going anywhere in this storm." They made it 3 steps before the sky opened up. Rain came down in sheets, cold and sudden, turning the dusty yard into slick mud within seconds. Eliza tightened her grip around his waist and pushed forward, rain streaming down her face, soaking through her clothes. The stranger's boot caught on something and he stumbled. Eliza felt his weight shift, felt him starting to go down, and she planted her feet and hauled upward with strength born from 15 years of ranch work. "Keep moving," she ordered. "We're almost there." "You're stronger than you look," he gasped, and despite everything, the storm, the blood, the trouble that was surely coming, she almost smiled. They reached the porch steps. Eliza got him inside, rain pouring off both of them, leaving puddles on the hardwood floor she'd refinished with her own hands 3 summers ago. She kicked the door shut against the wind and helped him into the kitchen, easing him down into one of the sturdy chairs at her table. Lightning illuminated the windows in brilliant flashes. Thunder followed immediately. The storm was directly overhead now, unleashing its fury on the ranch. Eliza moved with practiced efficiency, lighting lamps because the storm had darkened the sky to twilight. She grabbed towels, her medical kit, a basin of water. When she turned back to him, he was slumped in the chair, eyes closed, one hand pressed against the wound in his side. "Shirt off," she said. His eyes opened, those startling gray-blue eyes, and for a moment something flickered there. Not impropriety, but awareness. Awareness that she was a woman, and he was a man, and they were alone in this house together. Then pain won out over propriety, and he started working at the buttons with shaking fingers. Eliza didn't wait. She stepped forward and batted his hands away, unfastening the buttons herself with quick, impersonal movements. She'd nursed Samuel through his final illness, had birthed calves and stitched up wounds on horses, and mended every manner of creature that had needed her help. A man's bare chest was just anatomy, nothing she hadn't seen before. But when she peeled the blood-soaked shirt away and saw the lean muscle, the scars that spoke of a hard life, the way his skin was hot with fever beneath her hands, something shifted inside her chest, some long dormant awareness that whispered, not just anatomy, not just another wounded thing. A man! She pushed the feeling down hard and focused on the wound. The bullet had carved a furrow across his ribs on the left side, deep enough to bleed badly, but not deep enough to have hit anything vital. Lucky. Infected, though. She could see the angry red spreading outward from the wound, feel the heat radiating from his skin. "This is going to hurt," Eliza warned. "Everything already hurts." "It's about to hurt worse." She cleaned the wound with whiskey from her medicinal supplies, and to his credit, he only hissed once and gripped the edge of the table hard enough to make the wood creak. Then she packed it with clean cloth, wrapped his ribs tight, and sat back to study her work. "You'll live," she said finally. "Assuming the infection doesn't get worse, assuming whoever shot you doesn't show up looking to finish the job." "Thank you." His voice was rough but sincere. "I mean it. Thank you for not turning me away." "I haven't decided not to turn you away yet," Eliza said, though they both knew it was a lie. She'd already made her choice the moment she'd run toward him instead of locking her doors. "What's your name?" "Cole. Cole Bennett." "Eliza McAllister. This is my ranch. You're in Montana, about 12 miles from Crow's Nest." "I know. I was heading for Billings, but—" He trailed off, swaying slightly in the chair. "But you collapsed before you made it. Smart." She stood and moved to the stove, stoking the fire that had been banked for the afternoon. "When's the last time you ate?" "I don't remember." Of course he didn't. Eliza pulled out bread, cold beef from yesterday's dinner, cheese. She assembled a plate and set it in front of him along with a glass of water. "Eat, slowly. Your stomach won't thank you if you gulp it down." Cole looked at the food like it was a miracle, but he followed her instructions, taking small bites, chewing carefully. Eliza watched him from across the kitchen, her arms crossed, trying to figure out what exactly she'd just invited into her carefully ordered life. He was trouble. That much was obvious. Men didn't ride into Montana bleeding and desperate unless they were running from something serious. A gunfight, he'd said, one he claimed was fair, but fair didn't mean legal, and it definitely didn't mean safe. The storm raged outside, rain hammering the roof, wind shrieking around the corners of the house. Inside, lamplight flickered across the kitchen walls, painting everything in warm gold that made the moment feel suspended, separate from reality. Cole finished eating and looked up at her. "I should tell you what happened." "You should," Eliza agreed. "But first you should sleep. You're about 2 minutes from passing out, and I'd rather you do it in a bed than on my kitchen floor." "I can work," he said, trying to stand and immediately proving her point by swaying dangerously. "Tomorrow, I can start earning my keep." Eliza moved quickly, catching his arm before he fell. "The only thing you're earning tonight is a spot in the guest room. Come on." She guided him down the hallway to the small room she kept for no one anymore. It had been years since she'd had a guest. The bed was made with clean sheets, though. Eliza kept everything ready, even things she never expected to use again. Cole collapsed onto the mattress with a groan that was equal parts pain and relief. Eliza pulled his boots off, threw a quilt over him, and stepped back. "Eliza," he said, already half asleep, fever and exhaustion pulling him under. I didn't do anything wrong. The man I shot, he drew first. I swear it." "We'll talk about it tomorrow," she said quietly. But he was already gone, his breathing evening out into sleep. Eliza stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching the rise and fall of his chest, the way his face relaxed slightly when pain released its grip. He looked younger when he slept, vulnerable, like someone's son, someone's brother, someone worth saving. She turned away and walked back through her empty house, the storm still raging, her mind already racing ahead to all the complications she'd just invited into her life. Morning came clear and bright, the storm having washed the world clean during the night. Eliza woke at her usual hour, 5 a.m., and lay in bed for a moment, listening to the house. Silence. The same silence that greeted her every morning. Then she remembered. Not alone. Not this morning. She rose and dressed quickly, twisting her hair into its customary bun, pulling on work clothes that had seen better years. When she emerged from her bedroom, she paused outside the guest room. The door was open. The bed was empty. Panic flared bright in her chest. Had he left? Had he gotten himself killed wandering off in a fever? Had someone come in the night and... Movement outside the window caught her eye. Eliza crossed to it and looked out. Cole Bennett was in her barnyard, moving slowly but purposefully, a milk pail in one hand. Even from here, she could see the careful way he held himself, protecting his injured side. He was wearing the same blood-stained pants from yesterday, but had found one of Samuel's old shirts hanging in the guest room. Too big in the shoulders, but clean. As she watched, he set the pail down by the barn door and picked up a hammer, examining a section of fence that had been on her mental list of repairs for 2 weeks. Eliza found herself walking outside before she'd consciously decided to move. The morning air was cool and fresh, washed clean by yesterday's rain. Her boots squelched slightly in the mud as she crossed the yard. Cole looked up at her approach, and in the morning light she could see the lines of pain bracketing his mouth, the careful way he held himself. "You should be in bed," Eliza said. "You should have more help around here," Cole countered, gesturing at the fence, the overflowing milk pail, the 100 other small tasks that were part of running a ranch. "This is too much for one person." "I've been managing just fine for 15 years. Managing isn't thriving." He set the hammer down and met her eyes. The gray-blue was clearer this morning, less fever-bright, but no less intense. "I meant what I said last night. I want to work. I need to work. Let me earn my keep while I heal." Eliza crossed her arms. "You're injured, infected. You need rest, not—" "I need purpose," Cole interrupted quietly. "I need to feel like I'm not just taking charity from a stranger who had every right to turn me away." The words hung between them, weighted with something Eliza recognized. Pride. Not the arrogant kind the town accused her of, but the kind that came from self-respect, from needing to pull your own weight in a world that was always ready to knock you down. 3 days, she said finally. "You rest for 3 days, let that wound start healing properly. After that, if you can work without tearing yourself open, we'll talk about you staying on. I can start now." 3 days, Mr. Bennett. "Or you can ride out this morning and take your chances with infection and whoever's looking for you. Your choice." Cole studied her face, and Eliza had the strangest sensation of being truly seen, not measured for her land or her age or her usefulness, but actually seen. It was unsettling. It made her want to step back, to retreat behind the armor she'd spent years constructing. Instead, she held his gaze. 3 days? Cole agreed. "But I'm fixing this fence section this morning. It'll take an hour, and I'll be careful. Then I'll rest." "Stubborn," Eliza muttered. "Takes one to know one, ma'am." Was that a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth? Eliza felt something flutter in her chest, something light and unfamiliar and terrifying. She turned away before he could see her face. "I'll make breakfast. You'll eat it, fix your fence, and then you'll rest. Are we clear?" "Yes, ma'am." Eliza walked back toward the house, very aware of his eyes on her back, very aware that her carefully ordered world had just tilted on its axis in a way that felt both dangerous and strangely, impossibly right. The 3 days passed in a rhythm Eliza hadn't experienced in years. Cole kept his word about resting, more or less. He spent the mornings on tasks that didn't require heavy lifting, mending tack, organizing the barn, fixing small things that had been broken so long Eliza had stopped seeing them. In the afternoons, he slept, and Eliza went about her usual work, very aware of the presence of another person in her house. They fell into a pattern of shared meals. Breakfast at dawn, dinner at dusk. At first, they ate in silence. Eliza because she was out of practice with conversation, Cole because he was still healing, still cautious. But on the evening of the second day, as they sat at the kitchen table with plates of beef stew between them, Cole broke the silence. "You run this whole operation yourself?" Eliza looked up from her food. "I do." "How many acres?" 3,000, give or take. About 200 head of cattle, dozen horses. She paused. "Why?" "Just impressed," Cole said simply. "That's a lot for one person. I had help when my husband was alive. After he passed, I hired hands when I could afford them. But most men don't want to work for a woman, and the ones who do—" She trailed off, remembering the ones who'd seen her widowhood as opportunity, who'd assumed she'd be grateful for any attention, any offer, no matter how disrespectful. "The ones who do what?" Cole prompted. "They had ideas about what else I might need besides ranch work," Eliza said flatly. "I sent them packing." Cole nodded, his expression darkening slightly. "I'm sorry, that must have been—" "I managed," Eliza cut him off, the words coming out sharper than she intended. She didn't want sympathy, didn't want to be seen as someone to feel sorry for, but Cole didn't look at her with pity. He looked at her with something else. Respect, maybe. Understanding. "What about you?" Eliza asked, changing the subject. "Where are you from?" "Wyoming, originally. Worked ranches from here to Texas. Never stayed anywhere too long." He picked at his food. "Never had a reason to." "Until now?" "Until I got shot and a stubborn woman saved my life," Cole said, and there it was again, that hint of a smile, the first real one she'd seen from him. Eliza felt her own lips twitch in response. "I'm not stubborn. I'm practical." That's what all stubborn people say. "And running from a gunfight is practical?" Cole's smile faded. He set down his fork and met her eyes. "You deserve to know what happened, the truth of it." "All right," Eliza said quietly. "Tell me." He told her about a card game in Billings that had turned ugly. A man named Dutch Kavanaugh who'd been cheating, who'd lost his temper when Cole called him on it, who'd gone for his gun first. Cole had been faster. The shot had been clean, self-defense by any reasonable measure. But Dutch Kavanaugh had brothers, and those brothers didn't care about reasonable. "They were waiting outside town," Cole said. "3 of them. Started shooting before I even knew they were there. I got lucky. The bullet only grazed me. But they'll be looking. Men like that, they don't let things go." Eliza listened, her food growing cold on her plate. She should be afraid. Should be calculating how quickly she could get him off her property before trouble arrived. Instead, she said, "How long before they track you here?" "I was careful, covered my trail, but—" Cole shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled at his healing wound. "Eventually, maybe a week, maybe a month. Maybe never, if I'm lucky." "And if they do find you?" "Then I'll lead them away from here. I won't bring that trouble to your door, Eliza, I swear it." The way he said her name, not ma'am, not Mrs. McAllister, but Eliza, sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. "We'll deal with it if it comes," she heard herself say. "Until then, you can stay, work, heal." "Why?" Cole asked, the question soft but direct. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. Don't owe me anything." Eliza looked at him across the table, this young cowboy with trouble in his shadow and an honest face and eyes that looked at her like she was worth seeing. "Because everyone deserves a chance to heal," she said finally, "even stubborn cowboys who can't follow simple instructions about resting." Cole laughed, the sound startled out of him, and Eliza felt warmth spread through her chest. When was the last time she'd made someone laugh? When was the last time she'd wanted to? The third day dawned clear and cold, frost glittering on the grass despite it being July. Eliza woke to sounds in the kitchen, the clatter of pans, the smell of coffee brewing. She found Cole at her stove, moving carefully but competently, flipping flapjacks on the griddle. "What are you doing?" Eliza demanded. "Earning my keep," Cole said without turning around. "You fed me for 3 days, figured it was my turn." "You're supposed to be resting." "I rested 3 whole days like you ordered. Now it's time to work." He slid flapjacks onto 2 plates, added bacon, poured coffee. Then he turned and gestured at the table. "Sit, eat. Then I'm going out to check those fence lines in the north pasture you mentioned yesterday." Eliza wanted to argue, wanted to maintain control, maintain the order of her world. But the flapjacks smelled good, and Cole was looking at her with such quiet determination that she found herself sitting, accepting the plate he set in front of her. They ate together as dawn light spilled through the windows, painting everything gold, and Eliza realized with a start that the frost in her chest had thawed, just a little, just enough to let in something she'd thought was dead forever. Hope. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Cole worked from dawn to dusk, and Eliza found herself working alongside him more often than not. Together, they repaired fences that had needed attention for months. They brought in hay from the far fields. They broke a wild colt that had been too much for Eliza to handle alone. The ranch thrived in ways it hadn't in years, but it was more than just the work. It was the way Cole anticipated what she needed before she asked. The way he never once questioned her knowledge or her decisions. The way he looked at her, not at her age, not at her hardness, but at her. In the evenings, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the plains. They talked about everything and nothing, about the ranch, about the weather, about dreams they'd both stopped admitting they had. And sometimes they didn't talk at all. Sometimes the silence was enough. The simple comfort of another person's presence filling the emptiness that had haunted Eliza for so long. She caught herself smiling more, laughing at his dry observations about the chickens or the stubborn cattle, looking forward to mornings instead of dreading another day of solitude. The town noticed, of course. When Eliza rode into Crow's Nest for supplies, she felt the eyes on her, heard the whispers that cut off when she approached. That's her young man working out at Iron Creek. You see how he looks at her? Shameful at her age. Wonder what he's really after. Wouldn't be the first man to see opportunity in a lonely widow with property. Eliza held her head high and ignored them. She'd spent 15 years not caring what they thought. She wasn't going to start now. But their words burrowed under her skin anyway, planted seeds of doubt in soil that was already uncertain. What did Cole want? Why was he still here? His wound had healed. He could leave any time. Find work on a ranch where his presence wouldn't cause gossip, where he wouldn't be tied to a woman nearly twice his age. She was sitting on the porch one evening, wrestling with these thoughts, when Cole emerged from the barn and walked toward her. The sun was setting behind him, turning him into a silhouette, and Eliza's breath caught at the simple beauty of it, a man approaching at day's end, coming home. "Something on your mind?" Cole asked, settling onto the porch step beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cooling evening air. "Just thinking," Eliza said. "About?" She should deflect, should make something up. Instead, she heard herself say, "Why are you still here, Cole?" He turned to look at her, surprise clear on his face. "What do you mean?" "You're healed. You can ride out any time, find proper work, not just this." She gestured vaguely at the ranch, at herself, at the impossible situation they'd created. "This is proper work," Cole said firmly. "Best work I've ever done." "But, Eliza," he shifted to face her fully, and the intensity in his gray-blue eyes made her pulse quicken. "I'm not going anywhere, not unless you tell me to go." "People talk," she said quietly. "In town, they think, I don't care what they think, do you? I've never cared before." "Then why start now?" "Because you make me feel things I thought were dead," Eliza wanted to say. "Because when you look at me like that, I forget about all the reasons this is impossible. Because for the first time in 15 years, I'm afraid, not of being alone, but of losing this." But she couldn't say any of that, couldn't expose herself that completely. "I'm 58 years old," she said instead. "You're young enough to be my son." "I'm 32, and you're not my mother." Cole's voice was gentle but unyielding. "And I don't see age when I look at you, Eliza. I see strength, kindness hidden under armor. A woman who built an empire from grief and never asked for anyone's permission to do it." Eliza's throat tightened. "Cole, I see someone worth staying for," he finished softly. "If you'll have me." The words hung between them, weighted with possibility and danger and want. Eliza looked at him, really looked, saw the honesty in his face, the way he held himself open to her despite knowing she could crush this fragile thing growing between them with a single word. She'd spent 15 years protecting herself, building walls, choosing safety over risk, isolation over connection. But sitting here with the last light fading and this impossible man looking at her like she was something precious, Eliza McAllister made a different choice. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, rough and warm and real. They sat together in the gathering darkness, not speaking, just holding on. And for the first time since Samuel died, Eliza felt the frost in her chest begin to truly thaw. The fourth week brought a heat wave that baked the plains and drove even the cattle to seek shade in the middle of the day. Eliza and Cole worked in the early mornings and late evenings, avoiding the worst of the sun. They'd grown comfortable with each other in ways that both thrilled and terrified Eliza. Cole's hand on her back as they worked side by side. The way he called her Eliza now instead of ma'am. The moments when their eyes met across the barn and held just a beat too long. Nothing improper had happened, nothing beyond that single-held hand on the porch. But the tension built between them like the pressure before a thunderstorm, and Eliza knew that something would have to break. It happened on a Tuesday. They'd been moving cattle from one pasture to another, hot, dusty work that left them both exhausted. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they stopped to rest by the creek that gave Iron Creek Ranch its name. Eliza knelt at the water's edge, splashing her face and neck, grateful for the cool relief. When she looked up, Cole was watching her with an expression that made her pulse race. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You're beautiful," Cole said simply. Eliza laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "I'm old, weathered, gray-haired, and beautiful," Cole repeated, moving closer. "Strong and real and more alive than any woman I've ever known." He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his sun-warmed skin. "Cole," she whispered, but she didn't know if it was warning or invitation. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly, "and I will. Tell me this is wrong, that I'm imagining what's between us and I'll never mention it again." Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. She could feel 15 years of loneliness warring with 15 years of self-protection. Could hear the town's voices in her head, all the reasons this was impossible, inappropriate, doomed. But she could also feel Cole's hand reaching for hers again, could see the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he was offering her something precious and fragile, the truth of his feelings, with no guarantee she wouldn't shatter them. "It's not wrong," Eliza heard herself say, "and you're not imagining it." The relief that flooded Cole's face was answer enough. He pulled her close, not roughly, but with a tenderness that undid her completely. His arms came around her, and Eliza let herself lean into his strength, let herself feel protected instead of always being the protector. "I want to court you properly," Cole murmured against her hair. "Want to do this right." Eliza pulled back enough to look at him, searching his face. "Why?" "Because you deserve to be courted. Deserve romance and respect and someone who sees your worth." "Cole, I need to tell you something." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Before this goes any further. Before you make promises you might not want to keep." His brow furrowed. "What is it?" Eliza took a breath. This was the moment. The truth she'd hidden from everyone in Crow's Nest. The secret that had kept her safe from gold diggers and opportunists. "I'm not just a ranch widow," she said. "I'm wealthy. Very wealthy. Samuel left me the ranch, yes, but he also left me investments. Property. I quietly own half the businesses in Crow's Nest, the general store, the bank, the hotel. I've hidden it to avoid exactly the kind of attention I knew it would bring." She watched his face, waiting for the change, the calculation. The moment when his feelings shifted from genuine to opportunistic. But Cole just nodded slowly. "That explains a few things. The quality of your horses, the fact that you can run this place without hiring help, the way certain people in town treat you, not just like you're difficult, but like you're dangerous." "And?" Eliza demanded. "Doesn't that change things?" "Why would it?" Cole asked, genuinely confused. "Eliza, I want you. The woman who saved my life, who works harder than any person I've known, who's kind even when she pretends not to be. Your money is yours. It doesn't change what I feel." "You say that now?" "I say it, and I mean it." He cupped her face in his hands, calloused palms gentle against her cheeks. I don't want your money, Eliza. I want the woman. I want to wake up every morning knowing I get to work beside you. Want to fall asleep every night knowing you're safe. Want to build something real with you, not off your wealth, but beside your strength. Tears pricked at Eliza's eyes, the first tears she'd allowed herself in years. I'm afraid, she whispered. Of what? Of this. Of believing it's real and having it taken away. Of being hurt again. I can't promise you'll never hurt, Cole said honestly, but I can promise I'll never be the one who causes it. Not intentionally. Not ever. Eliza looked into his eyes and saw only truth, only this impossible, wonderful man who'd stumbled into her life bleeding and desperate and had somehow become essential. She kissed him. It was tentative at first. She was out of practice, uncertain, vulnerable in ways she hadn't allowed herself to be in decades. But Cole met her gentleness with his own, his lips warm and careful, asking rather than demanding. And when he deepened the kiss, one hand sliding into her hair to pull her closer, Eliza felt the last of her defenses crumble, felt 15 years of frost finally, completely melt away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. Is that a yes to being courted? He asked, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Yes, Eliza said, then stronger. Yes. They rode back to the ranch house hand in hand as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Eliza McAllister felt young, felt hopeful, felt like maybe, just maybe, second chances were real after all. She had no way of knowing that trouble was already riding toward Iron Creek Ranch, that the Kavanaugh brothers had finally picked up Cole's trail, that everything she'd just allowed herself to hope for was about to be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. But in that moment, with Cole's hand warm in hers and the future spreading out before them like the endless Montana plains, Eliza chose to believe in possibility. She chose to believe in love. The days that followed their kiss by the creek were golden in ways Eliza had forgotten were possible. Cole courted her the way he'd promised, with small gestures that spoke louder than grand declarations. Wildflowers left on her pillow, coffee already brewing when she woke, his hand finding hers across the dinner table as evening light painted the kitchen walls amber. They worked the ranch together with an efficiency born from growing understanding. Cole learned to read her moods, knew when she needed silence and when she needed conversation. Eliza discovered that sharing the burden of daily tasks didn't diminish her strength, it multiplied it. But beneath the sweetness, a thread of tension wound tighter each day. Cole's eyes would drift toward the horizon sometimes, his jaw tightening as he scanned the empty plains. He was waiting. They both were. Tell me about Samuel, Cole said one evening as they sat on the porch, the day's heat finally breaking into cooler air. Eliza stiffened slightly. No one had asked about her husband in years. The town had talked about him after his death, but no one had asked her. Why? She asked carefully. Because he was part of your life, part of what made you who you are. Cole's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I want to know you, Eliza. All of you. She was quiet for a long moment, sifting through memories that had grown dusty with time. He was a good man, honest, hardworking. We married young. I was 22, he was 25. Built this ranch from nothing but determination and borrowed money. Did you love him? The question was gentle, without judgment, and Eliza found herself answering honestly. I did, but it was a different kind of love than... She trailed off, uncertain how to finish. Than this? Cole supplied softly. Yes. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. Samuel and I were partners. We respected each other, worked well together, but we were both so young, so focused on survival. There wasn't time for romance or passion. We built something solid, but, Cole prompted when she didn't continue. But I never felt with him what I feel when you look at me, Eliza said, the words barely above a whisper. Never felt like my heart might burst just from watching him walk across the yard. Never stayed awake at night thinking about the sound of his voice. Cole brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. I stay awake thinking about you, too. Heat flooded Eliza's cheeks. At 58, she'd thought herself beyond blushing, beyond the giddy uncertainty of new love. She'd been wrong. "This is foolish," she said, but she was smiling. "We're foolish. Best kind of foolish there is." Cole shifted closer, his shoulder pressing against hers. "Eliza, I need to tell you something." The seriousness in his tone made her pulse quicken. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about writing into Billings, finding out if the Kavanaughs are still looking for me or if maybe they've let it go." "No." The word came out sharp and immediate. Eliza pulled her hand from his, turning to face him fully. "Absolutely not. That's the last place you should go." "I can't hide here forever," Cole said reasonably. "Can't live waiting for trouble to find us. Better to face it head on. Get answers." "Better to get yourself killed, you mean?" Eliza stood, pacing the length of the porch. "Cole, those men tried to shoot you once already. What makes you think they won't finish the job if you walk right into their territory?" "I'll be careful." "Careful doesn't stop bullets." She whirled on him, fear sharpening her voice into something cutting. "You want answers? Fine. The answer is they're dangerous, and you're safer here than riding into a town where they have friends, allies, people who'll tell them the moment you arrive." Cole rose slowly, his expression unreadable. "So what do you suggest? That I stay hidden on your ranch for the rest of my life?" "If that's what it takes to keep you alive, yes." "That's not living, Eliza. That's existing. And I won't do it. Won't make you complicit in my hiding." They stared at each other, the air between them crackling with tension that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with fear wearing the mask of anger. "I can't lose you," Eliza finally said, her voice breaking on the words. "I know it's selfish. I know I have no right to ask you to stay hidden. But Cole, I just found you. Just let myself believe in this. I can't. I won't." He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. Eliza fought it for a moment, still angry, still terrified, but his warmth and solidness wore down her resistance. "You won't lose me," Cole murmured against her hair. "I promise you won't lose me." "You can't promise that. No one can promise that." "Then I'll promise this instead. I won't do anything reckless. Won't ride into Billings without a plan. Won't take unnecessary risks." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "But Eliza, we need to be realistic. The Kavanaughs are a problem that won't disappear just because we ignore it." She knew he was right, hated that he was right. "Give it time," she said finally. "A few more weeks at least. Let me think. Let me figure out if there's another way." Cole studied her face, then nodded slowly. "A few more weeks. But then we deal with this, one way or another. Agreed?" "Agreed." They sealed it with a kiss that tasted of compromise and fear, and the desperate hope that time might somehow solve what violence had started. The next morning, Eliza rode into Crow's Nest alone. She needed supplies, but more than that, she needed information. If the Kavanaughs were making inquiries, someone would have heard. The general store was busy when she arrived. Townsfolk clustered around the counter, where Albert Miller held court behind the register. The conversation died the moment Eliza walked through the door. "Mrs. McAllister," Albert said, his tone carefully neutral. "What can I do for you today?" "Just need some basics. Coffee, flour, sugar." Eliza handed him her list, very aware of the eyes on her back, the whispers that started up the moment she turned toward the shelves. She was examining bags of flour when Martha Henderson sidled up beside her, all false sweetness and sharp edges. "Eliza, dear, we haven't seen you at church in weeks." "Been busy with the ranch." Eliza kept her tone flat, discouraging. "Of course, with that young man of yours taking up so much of your time." Martha's smile didn't reach her eyes. "People are talking, you know, wondering about his intentions, about yours." Eliza turned to face her fully. "Let them wonder. My business is my own, Martha." "Oh, I'm not judging, just concerned. A woman your age, alone with a man young enough to be your son," Martha trailed off meaningfully. "What will people think?" "I stopped caring what people think around the same time I stopped pretending to enjoy your company," Eliza said coolly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have shopping to finish." She brushed past Martha, her hands shaking with suppressed anger. Why did she let these people get under her skin? She'd endured their gossip for 15 years. Why did it matter now? Because now she had something to lose, someone to protect. Eliza was loading her purchases into the wagon when Sheriff Tom Dawson approached, his weathered face creased with concern. "Eliza, got a minute?" She paused, studying him. Tom had always been fair with her, one of the few men in town who treated her with genuine respect. "What is it, Tom?" "Had some men through here last week. 3 of them, from Billings. Asking questions about a cowboy who might have passed through, young, dark-haired, riding a sorrel gelding." Tom's eyes were sharp despite his casual tone. "They were real interested in finding him. Real interested." Eliza's blood ran cold. "What did you tell them?" "Told them I hadn't seen anyone matching that description. Suggested they try the ranches north of here." Tom leaned against the wagon. "They didn't believe me, but they moved on, for now." "Thank you," Eliza said quietly. "Eliza, if there's trouble out at your place, there's no trouble. That young man you've got working for you, he wouldn't happen to ride a sorrel gelding, would he?" Eliza met his eyes steadily. "Lots of cowboys ride sorrel geldings, Tom." The sheriff sighed. "Listen to me carefully. Those men, the Kavanaughs, they're not the type to give up easy. They're known in Billings as trouble, the kind that doesn't care much about law or decency when they want something." "Noted. And if your cowboy is the man they're looking for, you need to understand what you're getting into. Protecting him could bring that trouble right to your door." "My door, my choice." Eliza climbed onto the wagon seat. "Anything else, Sheriff?" Tom shook his head, but his expression was troubled. "Just be careful, Eliza. You've built a good life out there. Hate to see it torn apart over some young drifter." "He's not a drifter," Eliza said, surprising herself with the fierce protectiveness in her voice. "And my life won't be torn apart. I've survived worse than the Kavanaughs." She drove away before Tom could respond, but his words echoed in her mind the entire ride back to the ranch. The Kavanaughs had been in Crow's Nest, had asked about Cole specifically, were still hunting him. The problem wasn't going away. It was getting closer. Cole was in the barn when she returned, mucking out stalls. He looked up at her approach, immediately reading the tension in her shoulders. "What happened?" Eliza told him everything. Martha's snide comments, the sheriff's warning, the fact that the Kavanaughs had been in town just last week. Cole's jaw tightened with each word. When she finished, he drove the pitchfork into the hay with more force than necessary. "I should leave," he said flatly. "Tonight, before they come here." "No." Eliza's voice was steel. "Running won't solve this. They'll just keep hunting you. Better they hunt me away from you than bring violence to your ranch. This is my ranch, and I decide who stays and who goes." She crossed to him, gripping his arm. "Cole, listen to me. You're not alone in this anymore. We face it together, or not at all." "Eliza, you don't understand what these men are capable of. I understand perfectly. I also understand that I'm not some helpless woman who needs protecting." Her eyes flashed. "I've defended this ranch from drought, disease, cattle rustlers, and men who thought they could intimidate me into selling. 3 angry brothers from Billings don't scare me." Despite the gravity of the situation, Cole's lips twitched. "You're terrifying when you're fierce, you know that?" "Good. Remember it." But she softened her grip on his arm, her thumb rubbing gentle circles. "We're in this together, Cole. I meant what I said. You're not alone anymore." He pulled her close, and they stood there in the dusty barn, holding each other while sunlight slanted through the gaps in the boards and horses shuffled in their stalls. "We need a plan," Cole said finally. "We do. But first, we need to finish our work. Life doesn't stop just because trouble's coming." They fell back into their routine, but everything had changed. Cole wore his gun belt now when they worked, something Eliza had never seen him do before. His eyes scanned the horizon constantly. At night, he checked the locks on all the doors and windows, positioned himself so he could see the approach from any direction. Eliza found herself doing the same. Her own rifle stayed closer now, within arm's reach instead of mounted above the mantel. She slept lighter, waking at every unusual sound. They were preparing for war, even as they tried to pretend life was normal. A week passed. Then another. The tension wound tighter, waiting for a break that didn't come. It was during this uneasy peace that Cole first spoke of the future. They were sitting at the kitchen table after dinner, the remains of their meal pushed aside. Cole had been quiet all evening, clearly wrestling with something. "What if we got married?" he said suddenly. Eliza's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. "What?" "Married." Cole reached across the table, taking her hand. "You and me. Properly wed." "Cole, we can't, people would—" Eliza stumbled over the words, her heart racing. "People already talk. Let them talk about something real." His thumb stroked across her knuckles. "I love you, Eliza. Want to build a life with you. Want the right to stand beside you as your husband, not just a hired hand who happens to share your bed." "We don't share a bed," Eliza pointed out, flustered. "Not yet, but I hope we will, once you're my wife." Cole's smile was gentle, but his eyes were serious. "I'm not asking because of the Kavanaughs. Not asking because I need your protection or your money. I'm asking because I can't imagine my future without you in it." Eliza's throat tightened. "I'm nearly 60 years old, Cole. I can't give you children, can't give you the kind of future a young man deserves." "I don't want children. I want you." He stood, came around the table, and knelt beside her chair. "Eliza McAllister, you're the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I've ever known. The fact that you're older than me doesn't matter. The fact that people will judge us doesn't matter. Nothing matters except this. I love you, and I want to spend whatever time we have building something real together." Tears blurred Eliza's vision. "You're sure? Absolutely sure?" "Never been more sure of anything." She looked down at this impossible man kneeling beside her, offering her everything she'd thought she'd never have again: love, partnership, a future that wasn't just endless lonely days. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Cole's face lit up with joy so pure it took her breath away. He pulled her down into a kiss that was both tender and fierce, a promise and a celebration. When they finally broke apart, both of them laughing and crying at the same time, Eliza felt something she hadn't felt in decades, completely, utterly happy. "We'll do it right," Cole said, still holding her close. "Proper wedding in town. Let everyone see that this is real, that we choose each other." "They'll talk," Eliza warned. "Let them. I'll be too busy being your husband to care." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, their voices soft in the lamplight, hope and love weaving together into something stronger than either of them alone. Neither of them noticed the shadow that detached from the tree line an hour after sunset. Neither of them saw the rider who'd been watching the house, marking the layout of the ranch, counting the number of horses in the corral. Trouble was closer than they knew. The next morning dawned clear and cold, unseasonably chilly for late August. Eliza woke to find Cole already up, standing at the bedroom window. Her bedroom window, where he'd spent the night in her bed for the first time, holding her as she slept. "What is it?" she asked, sitting up. "Thought I heard something, but it's probably nothing." He turned from the window, and the sight of him in the early light, shirtless, his hair tousled from sleep, a soft smile on his face when he looked at her, made Eliza's heart stutter. "Come back to bed," she said. "It's early yet." Cole's smile widened. He crossed to her, settled back under the covers, pulled her against his chest. "I could get used to this." "You better. You're stuck with me now." "Best kind of stuck there is." They lay together in the growing light, and Eliza marveled at how natural it felt, how right. She'd thought this part of her life was over, the intimacy, the simple comfort of another person's warmth beside her. But here she was, 58 years old, and discovering that the heart didn't care about age, about what was supposed to be possible. "When should we tell people?" Cole asked. "About the engagement?" "Soon. I want to ride into town this week, make it official. Let the gossips chew on something real instead of their speculation." "You sure you want to do that? Give them ammunition?" Eliza lifted her head to look at him. "I'm sure I want the world to know you're mine. Everything else can go to hell." Cole laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Have I mentioned how much I love you?" "Not in the last hour. Better remedy that." He did, with words and kisses and touches that made Eliza feel young and desired and absolutely alive. They were still in bed an hour later when the sound of hoofbeats shattered the morning peace. Multiple horses, approaching fast. Cole was out of bed instantly, reaching for his pants and gun belt. Eliza followed suit, dressing with quick efficiency, her own rifle in hand before Cole had even finished buttoning his shirt. They moved to the window together. 3 riders were coming up the main road to the ranch, their horses kicking up dust in the slanting morning light. "Kavanaugh's?" Eliza asked, though she already knew the answer from the way Cole's jaw had turned to stone. "That's them." His voice was flat, emotionless, the calm before violence. "Eliza, I need you to stay inside. Lock the doors. If shooting starts, I'll be beside you," Eliza interrupted. "This is my land, my home. I don't hide in my own house." "Eliza, no arguments, Cole. We do this together." She checked her rifle, made sure it was loaded. Her hands were steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "You said I was strong enough to face this. Time to prove you meant it." Cole looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Stay behind me, and if I tell you to get down, you get down. Agreed?" "Agreed." They walked out onto the porch together as the 3 riders pulled up at the gate. In the bright morning light, Eliza could see them clearly, rough men in their 30s and 40s, dust-stained and hard-eyed. The one in the middle sat his horse with the confidence of someone used to getting what he wanted through intimidation. "Cole Bennett," the man called out. "Been looking for you." "Dutch Cavanaugh," Cole replied, his voice carrying across the yard. "Figured you might be." "That's right. Me and my brothers here, Sam and Jake." Dutch gestured to the men flanking him. "We got some unfinished business." "Business was finished in Billings. Your brother drew first. I defended myself." "That's not how we see it." Dutch's smile was cold. "We see a man who murdered our blood and ran like a coward." "Then you see wrong." Cole's hand rested lightly on his gun, not threatening yet, but ready. "I didn't want trouble then, don't want it now, but I'll defend myself if pushed." Big words for a man hiding behind a woman's skirts. Eliza stepped forward before Cole could respond. "This is Iron Creek Ranch, my property, and that man beside me isn't hiding. He's standing exactly where he belongs." Dutch's eyes shifted to her, reassessing. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Just send Bennett out here and we'll be on our way." "Everything on this ranch concerns me, Mr. Cavanaugh, and Cole isn't going anywhere." "Eliza," Cole said quietly, warningly. She ignored him, moving to stand fully beside him instead of behind. "You have 2 choices, gentlemen. You can turn your horses around and ride back to Billings, or you can explain to Sheriff Dawson why you're trespassing on private property and threatening law-abiding citizens." Sam Cavanaugh, younger than Dutch, but meaner looking, spat into the dust. "Law-abiding? He killed our brother." "In self-defense, from what I understand. If you want justice, take it to a court. Otherwise, get off my land." The 3 brothers exchanged glances. Dutch's hand drifted toward his gun. "Don't," Cole said, his voice sharp as a blade. "Don't make that mistake." The air crystallized, tension so thick Eliza could barely breathe. 4 men, all armed, all watching for the first twitch that would turn words into gunfire. Eliza's finger rested on her rifle's trigger. She'd never shot at a person before, but if these men went for their guns, she wouldn't hesitate. Dutch seemed to sense this. His hand stilled, then deliberately moved away from his weapon. "This isn't over, Bennett. Not by a long shot." "Then make it over," Cole replied. "Call the law. Press charges if you think you have a case, but come riding onto this ranch with guns again, and it won't be murder, it'll be self-defense. 3 against 2 are better odds than you'll get in court." "3 against 2, Jake Cavanaugh said, speaking for the first time. His eyes were on Eliza. "You really willing to die for this drifter, lady?" "He's not a drifter, he's my fiancé." The words came out strong and clear, staking her claim in front of these men, in front of Cole, in front of the whole damn world. "And yes, I'm willing to defend what's mine." The shock on the Cavanaughs' faces was almost comical. Dutch's mouth actually fell open. "Your fiancé?" he repeated. "That's right." Eliza shifted her rifle slightly, just enough to remind them it was there. "Which means any threat to him is a threat to me. And I've got resources, connections, and enough money to make your lives very difficult if you push this. Is revenge for a fair fight really worth that trouble?" The brothers conferred in low voices. Eliza couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see the calculation in their eyes, the way they were reassessing the situation. Finally, Dutch looked back at Cole. 1 month. We'll give you 1 month to make this right. Come to Billings, face what you did like a man. If you don't, we'll be back, and next time we won't be so polite. There's nothing to make right, Cole said, but I'll consider your offer. It wasn't an agreement, but it wasn't an outright refusal either. Dutch seemed to recognize this as the best he was going to get. He wheeled his horse around, his brothers following suit. 1 month, Bennett, he called over his shoulder. Don't make us come back here. They rode off, dust rising in their wake. Eliza and Cole stood on the porch until the riders disappeared over the ridge, until the sound of hoofbeats faded into silence. Only then did Eliza lower her rifle. Only then did she feel her hands start to shake. Eliza, Cole pulled her against him, and she let herself lean into his strength. That was incredibly brave and incredibly foolish. Which part? All of it. Especially telling them you'd marry me. You just painted a target on your back. The target was already there. She pulled back to look at him. The moment I let you stay, the moment I chose you, that target appeared. Might as well own it. Cole's hands came up to frame her face. I'm sorry. Sorry for bringing this to your door. Don't be. I made my choice with eyes wide open. She managed a shaky smile. Though maybe next time warn me before I get engaged in front of armed men? Despite everything, Cole laughed. You're the one who announced it. I was just standing there trying not to get shot. Someone had to establish the stakes. They went inside, both of them running on adrenaline and residual fear. Cole checked every window, every lock, while Eliza made coffee with trembling hands. 1 month, Cole said finally, sitting at the table. They gave us 1 month. To do what? Ride into Billings and let them kill you legally? To find another solution. He ran a hand through his hair. Maybe hire a lawyer, get statements from witnesses to the card game, prove it was self-defense. Or we could do nothing, Eliza said. Call their bluff. They're not going to ride back here and commit murder in broad daylight, not after threatening us in front of witnesses. You don't know that. Neither do you. She sat across from him, reached for his hands. Cole, we can't live in fear, can't let them dictate our choices. I won't let them hurt you. Whatever it takes, I won't let them hurt you. Same goes. Eliza squeezed his hands. We protect each other. That's what partners do. They sat together in the quiet kitchen, the morning sun streaming through windows, coffee growing cold in their cups. Outside, the ranch waited. Cattle to feed, horses to tend, 1,000 tasks that didn't stop just because danger had knocked on the door. But inside, in this moment, Eliza and Cole held on to each other and tried to believe that love was stronger than violence, that choosing each other had been worth the price they might have to pay. The confrontation with the Kavanaughs changed something fundamental in how they moved through each day. Work continued, it had to, but now every task carried the weight of borrowed time. Cole insisted on teaching Eliza to shoot with a pistol, not just the rifle she already handled with competence. They practiced in the late afternoons when the sun hung low and golden over the plains. Cole stood behind her, his arms bracketing hers as he adjusted her stance, his voice patient as he explained sight alignment and trigger control. Don't anticipate the recoil, he said, his breath warm against her ear. Just squeeze steady. Let the shot surprise you. Eliza fired, the pistol bucking in her hands. The tin can 20 yards out flew backward off the fence post. Better, Cole said, but his tone was distracted. He'd been like this for days now, physically present but mentally elsewhere, working through scenarios and contingencies that he wouldn't share. Eliza lowered the pistol and turned in the circle of his arms. Talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours? Just thinking about options. Such as? Cole's jaw tightened. Such as maybe the Kavanaughs are right. Maybe I should go to Billings, face this properly, instead of waiting for them to come back. We've been through this. Hear me out. He took the pistol from her hands, set it aside carefully. What if I go, but not alone? What if I take witnesses? Maybe hire that lawyer you mentioned. Present the facts to the marshal. Get it all on record that it was self-defense. And if the marshal doesn't care about facts? If the Kavanaughs have friends in Billings who'll twist the story? Eliza shook her head. You'd be walking into a trap, Cole. Maybe, Or maybe I'd be taking control of the situation instead of letting it control us. His hands found her shoulders, grip firm but gentle. Eliza, I can't live like this. Can't wake up every morning wondering if today's the day they come back. Can't put you in danger indefinitely just because I'm too afraid to face what I did. What you did was survive, Eliza said fiercely. You defended yourself against a man who would have killed you. There's no shame in that. There's no honor in hiding either. They stared at each other, neither willing to back down. The setting sun painted everything in shades of amber and crimson, beautiful and fleeting. Finally, Eliza said, 1 week. Give me 1 week to think about this, to see if there's another way. If we can't find one, then we'll talk about Billings. Cole nodded slowly. 1 week. But Eliza, if they come back before then, if they come back, we'll deal with it together, like we've dealt with everything else. That night, Eliza lay awake long after Cole had fallen asleep beside her. Moonlight streamed through the window, painting silver across the floorboards. She listened to his breathing, steady and deep, and tried to imagine a future where this didn't end in violence. The thought that came to her was audacious, possibly foolish, but the more she turned it over in her mind, the more sense it made. She knew people, had connections that Cole didn't realize existed, and she had resources, considerable resources, that could be brought to bear in ways that didn't involve guns or confrontation. By morning, she'd made her decision. Cole was already up, making coffee in the pre-dawn darkness. He turned when she entered the kitchen, his expression softening at the sight of her. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. I had an idea. Eliza poured herself coffee, organized her thoughts. What if we don't go to Billings? What if we bring Billings here? Cole's brow furrowed. I don't follow. The marshal, witnesses from the card game, a lawyer. What if we arrange for them to come to Crow's Nest, conduct the investigation here on neutral ground? She set her cup down, warming to the idea as she spoke. I know people, Cole. Have business dealings with men who have influence. I can make this happen. That would cost money. I have money, more than enough. Eliza moved closer to him. Let me use it. Let me use the resources I've spent 15 years hiding to actually do something that matters. Cole was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the dim light. You'd do that? Spend your money? Call in favors? All for me? For us, Eliza corrected. For our future. For the chance to live without waiting for the other boot to drop. She saw the moment he understood. The moment hope flickered to life in his eyes. You really think it would work? I think it's worth trying. Better than you riding into Billings alone. Better than waiting for the Kavanaughs to decide our fate. She took his hands. Let me do this, Cole. Let me fight for you the way you'd fight for me. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I don't deserve you. Good thing you're getting me anyway. Over the next 3 days, Eliza became a whirlwind of activity. She rode into Crow's Nest and sent telegrams to Billings, to Helena, to business associates she'd cultivated over the years. She wrote letters to lawyers, to the territorial marshal, to witnesses whose names Cole remembered from that night at the card table. She used her maiden name, Eliza Thornton, on the communications, invoking the weight of family connections that predated her marriage to Samuel. The Thorntons had been influential in Montana Territory, and even 15 years of self-imposed isolation hadn't completely erased that legacy. Sheriff Dawson watched her efforts with a mixture of admiration and concern. You're stirring up a hornet's nest, Eliza, he said as she composed another telegram in his office. The Kavanaughs aren't going to like official eyes on this situation. Then they shouldn't have come to my ranch making threats. Eliza didn't look up from her writing. Tom, I need your help. When the marshal comes, I need you to be ready to provide testimony about the Kavanaughs' visit, their threats. You're assuming the marshal will come. He'll come. Eliza's smile was sharp. I'm making it worth his while. By the end of the week, responses started arriving. A lawyer from Helena agreed to take Cole's case. 2 witnesses from the card game sent affidavits confirming Dutch Kavanaugh had drawn first, and the territorial marshal sent word that he'd personally investigate the matter, arriving in Crow's Nest within 10 days. Eliza brought the news back to the ranch, her heart lighter than it had been since the confrontation. She found Cole in the barn, working on a saddle that had needed repair for months. It's happening, she said without preamble. The marshal's coming. We have a lawyer, witnesses willing to testify. Cole set down his tools slowly, as if afraid sudden movement might shatter this fragile hope. You did it! You actually did it! We're not out of the woods yet. The Kavanaughs could still cause trouble, try to intimidate witnesses, or... He crossed to her in 3 strides, cutting off her words with a kiss that was equal parts gratitude and love and promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for fighting for us, for believing we deserve a future." "We do deserve it," Eliza replied, "and we're going to make damn sure we get it." The days before the marshal's arrival passed in a strange suspension of normalcy and tension. They worked the ranch, prepared their testimony, held each other at night, and tried not to think about all the ways this could still go wrong. On the 7th day after Eliza's telegram campaign, a rider appeared on the horizon. But it wasn't the marshal or a lawyer or any of the people they'd been expecting. It was Jake Kavanaugh, alone. Cole saw him first. They were mending fence in the north pasture when he straightened suddenly, his hand going to his gun. "Eliza, get behind me." She followed his gaze and felt her stomach drop. "What's he doing here?" "Nothing good." Cole's voice was flat, dangerous. "Go back to the house. Get your rifle." "I'm not leaving you alone with him." "Eliza." "No." She moved to stand beside him, watching Jake approach at an easy canter. "We face this together, remember?" Jake pulled up about 20 feet away, his hands visible and empty. Up close, Eliza could see he was younger than his brothers, maybe late 20s. His face bore a resemblance to Cole's. Same lean build, same sharp features that spoke of a hard life. "Came alone," Jake said by way of greeting. "No guns. Just want to talk." "Talk then," Cole replied, not relaxing his stance. Jake dismounted slowly, carefully, his movements deliberate to show he meant no threat. "My brothers don't know I'm here. Probably skin me alive if they found out." "Why are you here?" Eliza asked. Jake's eyes shifted to her, and she saw something unexpected there. Shame. "To tell the truth, I guess. About what happened in Billings." Cole went very still. "What truth?" "That Dutch was cheating, that he drew first when you called him on it, that you shot clean and fair, and any man watching would have done the same." Jake kicked at the dirt. "My other brother, the one you killed. He wasn't a good man, ma'am. I loved him because he was blood, but he wasn't good. Cheated at cards, got mean when he drank, picked fights he couldn't win, and expected his brothers to finish them." "Then why come after Cole?" Eliza demanded. "Why threaten us?" "Because Dutch and Sam can't let it go, can't admit that our brother brought it on himself. They're so focused on revenge they can't see straight." Jake looked at Cole. "I'm tired of it. Tired of living that way. So I came to tell you, there are witnesses in Billings who'll testify on your behalf if asked. Men who were at that card game, who saw everything." "Why tell us this?" Cole asked. "Why help me?" "Because I don't want more blood on my hands. Don't want to spend the rest of my life chasing ghosts of honor that never existed in the first place." Jake's jaw tightened. "And because you showed mercy when you didn't have to. You shot Dutch in the shoulder that night, not the heart. Could have killed him easy, but you didn't. That counts for something." The 3 of them stood in the afternoon sun, the weight of this revelation settling over them like dust after a storm. "Your brothers will come back," Cole said finally, "when they hear about the marshal's investigation. Probably. But they'll come expecting a showdown, not a legal proceeding with witnesses and testimony." Jake swung back into his saddle. "I'll do what I can to slow them down, make excuses, buy you time to get this settled proper." "Thank you," Eliza said, surprising herself. "This can't be easy for you." Jake's smile was bitter. "Easy would have been staying loyal to blood no matter what. But I've been thinking lately that maybe loyalty should go to what's right, not just what's family." He tipped his hat. "Good luck to you both. Hope you get the future you're fighting for." He rode away, leaving Eliza and Cole staring after him. "Did that just happen?" Eliza asked quietly. "I think it did." Cole's arm came around her waist. "You believe him?" "I do. Don't ask me why, but I do." They walked back to the house hand in hand, hope blooming brighter in their chests. Maybe, just maybe, this would work out after all. The marshal arrived on a Tuesday, accompanied by Eliza's hired lawyer and a clerk to take official statements. Marshal James Thornton was a weathered man in his 50s, all steel and competence, with eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. He was also, as it happened, Eliza's second cousin, a connection she'd deliberately not mentioned until he rode onto her property. "Eliza Thornton," he said, dismounting. "Heard you'd married and buried a McAllister. Didn't know you'd kept the name." "Seemed simpler," Eliza replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you for coming, James. Thank you for the very generous contribution to the Territorial Peace Fund that accompanied your request." His smile was dry. "Made it real easy to prioritize this investigation." They conducted the proceedings in Eliza's dining room, the table covered with documents and affidavits. Cole gave his testimony, clear and direct, while the clerk transcribed everything. The lawyer Eliza had hired, a sharp woman named Rebecca Walsh from Helena, asked clarifying questions and presented the witness statements. Marshal Thornton listened, his expression unreadable. When Cole finished, he sat back and studied them both. "This is a mess," he said finally. "Self-defense claim against a dead man, vengeful brothers making threats, witnesses scattered across 2 counties. "But it is self-defense," Rebecca Walsh interjected. "The witness statements are clear. Mr. Kavanaugh drew first. Mr. Bennett returned fire in defense of his life." "I'm inclined to agree," Thornton said. "But that doesn't mean the brothers will accept it." "They won't," Cole said quietly. "At least 2 of them won't. But they'll have to live with it, because I'm done running." Eliza reached for his hand under the table, squeezed tight. Thornton nodded slowly. "All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm ruling this a clear case of self-defense. No charges will be filed against Cole Bennett. I'll send official notification to the Kavanaughs and make it clear that any further harassment or threats will result in arrest warrants." He paused. "That being said, legal rulings don't always stop determined men. You 2 watch yourselves." "We will," Eliza promised. After the marshal and lawyer departed, promising to file all the necessary paperwork, Cole pulled Eliza into his arms on the porch. The sun was setting again, painting the sky in impossible colors. "It's really over," he said, wonder in his voice. "We're free." "We're free?" Eliza echoed. Then quieter. "Now we just have to tell the town we're getting married." Cole laughed, the sound bright with relief. After facing down the Kavanaughs and the territorial marshal, a few gossipy townsfolk should be easy. "You clearly don't know Martha Henderson." They rode into Crow's Nest the next morning, dressed in their Sunday best, what little they had of it. Eliza wore a dark blue dress that brought out her eyes, her hair arranged with more care than usual. Cole had borrowed Samuel's good suit, altered to fit his leaner frame, looking every inch the respectable rancher he was becoming. They walked into the general store hand in hand, and the conversations died instantly. Albert Miller looked up from the counter, his eyes widening at the sight of them together, clearly coupled, making no effort to hide it. "Mrs. McAllister," he said carefully. "Mr. Bennett, what can I do for you?" "We'd like to place an order," Eliza said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent store. "For a wedding, 2 weeks from Saturday. Nothing fancy, but we'll need supplies for a reception at the ranch afterward." The silence deepened, became absolute. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Martha Henderson recovered first. "A wedding? Eliza, surely you can't be serious." "Completely serious, Martha. Cole has asked me to marry him, and I've accepted." Eliza smiled, sharp and satisfied. "You're all invited, of course. I assume you'll want to witness this scandal firsthand." A ripple of shock went through the assembled townsfolk. But then, unexpectedly, old Mrs. Chen from the boarding house started to laugh. "Good for you, Eliza McAllister," she said, her weathered face creasing with genuine pleasure. "Life's too short to waste on other people's opinions. If you've found happiness, grab it with both hands." One by one, other voices joined in. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to show that not everyone in Crow's Nest was small-minded. Enough to make Eliza's eyes sting with unexpected tears. Sheriff Dawson pushed through the crowd, his hand extended to Cole. "Congratulations, son. You've got yourself a hell of a woman." "Don't I know it?" Cole replied, shaking his hand. The tenor of the room shifted then, from scandal to celebration. Albert Miller started writing down their order, suggesting additions and improvements. Women clustered around Eliza, offering advice on flowers and food. Men clapped Cole on the shoulder, testing him with the rough camaraderie that served as acceptance. Martha Henderson left in a huff, but Eliza barely noticed. She was too busy being embraced by Mrs. Chen, too busy laughing at Sheriff Dawson's terrible jokes, too busy feeling like she belonged to something larger than herself for the first time in 15 years. As they rode back to the ranch later that afternoon, wagon loaded with supplies and promises of help from neighbors, Eliza felt something unclench in her chest. Something she'd been holding tight since Samuel died, since she'd decided the world was safer if she kept it at arm's length. "You're smiling," Cole observed. "I am." "It's a good look on you." Eliza turned to him, this man who'd stumbled into her life bleeding and desperate and had somehow become essential. "Thank you." "For what?" "For making me believe in second chances. For being brave enough to love me despite every reason not to. For—" Cole leaned over and kissed her, stopping her words with the gentle pressure of his lips. When he pulled back, his eyes were soft with affection. "You don't need to thank me for loving you, Eliza. It's the easiest thing I've ever done." They made it back to the ranch as dusk painted the sky purple and gold. They unhitched the wagon, fed the horses, went through the familiar routines that had become the rhythm of their shared life. That night, as they lay in bed with moonlight painting patterns on the walls, Cole said, "I was thinking about something." "Dangerous habit," Eliza teased. "I want to sign papers. Legal documents, making it clear that I have no claim to your property or wealth, that everything you own stays yours, even after we're married." Eliza propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "Cole, you don't have to—" "I want to. I need you to know, need the whole world to know, that I'm not marrying you for what you own. I'm marrying you for who you are." His hand came up to cup her cheek. "Your lawyer can draw up whatever documents make you feel safe. I'll sign them gladly. And if I refuse, if I want to share everything with you, then we'll compromise. Keep the bulk of it in your name, but share the ranch. Make it ours, not just yours. Build something new together on the foundation of what you've already created." Eliza kissed him, slow and deep, pouring into it all the love and trust and gratitude she couldn't find words for. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she said, "We'll talk to Rebecca Walsh. Draw up papers that protect us both, that make clear this is a partnership of equals, regardless of what either of us brought to it." "Equals," Cole repeated, smiling. "I like that." They made love then, tender and fierce and full of promise. And afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Eliza let herself believe completely in the future they were building. She didn't know that 3 days later, Dutch and Sam Kavanaugh would receive the marshal's official ruling. Didn't know that rage would override reason, that pride would demand blood despite the law's proclamation. Didn't know that the final confrontation was still to come. But in that moment, safe in Cole's arms with the Montana night vast and starlit outside their window, Eliza McAllister was completely, perfectly happy. And that, she thought, as sleep finally claimed her, was worth whatever price they might still have to pay. The wedding preparations consumed the following week with a frenzy Eliza hadn't anticipated. Women from town appeared at her door offering help, some genuinely kind, others clearly hoping to witness the scandal up close. Eliza accepted all assistance with equal grace, too happy to care about motivations. Mrs. Chen took charge of the flowers, transforming Eliza's simple ideas into something beautiful. Rebecca Walsh arrived from Helena with the legal documents Cole had requested, papers that outlined a marriage of true partnership while protecting the assets Eliza had spent years building. Cole signed them without hesitation, not even reading the fine print, his trust in her absolute. "You should read them," Eliza protested. "Know what you're agreeing to." "I'm agreeing to marry you. That's all I need to know." She kissed him there in front of Rebecca Walsh, propriety be damned, and the lawyer smiled with the satisfaction of someone who'd seen real love and knew it when she encountered it again. Sheriff Dawson stopped by the ranch the day before the wedding, ostensibly to deliver a wedding gift, but clearly with other news on his mind. "The Kavanaughs got the marshal's ruling," he said without preamble. "Jake came through town yesterday. Said his brothers took it about as well as expected. Cole's expression darkened. Meaning they're angry, making noise about justice not being served. But Jake also said the official ruling took some wind out of their sails. Hard to claim righteousness when the law says otherwise. Hard, but not impossible, Eliza said quietly. No, not impossible. Dawson shifted his weight. I'll be at the wedding tomorrow, armed, just in case. Tom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You're one of my people, Eliza. Both of you are now. And I protect my people. After he left, Cole pulled Eliza close. We could postpone. Wait until we're sure the Kavanaughs won't cause trouble. No. Eliza's voice was firm. We've waited long enough. We've earned this happiness, and I won't let fear steal it from us. Even if it's dangerous? Especially then, because living in fear is just another way of dying, and I'm done with that. Cole held her tighter, and they stood together in the fading light, gathering strength for whatever tomorrow might bring. The wedding day dawned clear and impossibly beautiful, the kind of Montana morning that made you believe the world was full of nothing but possibility. Eliza woke alone in her bed. Cole had spent the night in the barn at Mrs. Chen's insistence that it was bad luck to see the bride before the ceremony, and for a moment she simply lay there, listening to the house breathe around her. Today she would marry Cole Bennett and claim the future they'd fought so hard to build. She rose and dressed carefully in the gown Mrs. Chen and the other women had helped her choose, simple cream silk that draped elegantly despite Eliza's protests that she was too old for such finery. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back, not because she looked younger, but because she looked happy, radiant with a joy she'd thought was forever beyond her reach. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Chen entered without waiting for permission, her arms full of wildflowers arranged into a stunning bouquet. For the bride, she announced, then stopped short at the sight of Eliza. Oh, my dear, you're beautiful. I'm old, Eliza corrected automatically. You're loved. That's what makes you beautiful. Mrs. Chen set the flowers down and came to adjust Eliza's hair, which she'd left loose at Cole's request. That young man of yours, he looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. Don't ever forget that. I won't. Eliza's throat tightened with emotion. Thank you, Lynn. For everything. For being kind when others weren't. Kindness costs nothing and pays everything. Mrs. Chen patted her cheek. Now come. Your groom is waiting, and if I know men, he's probably wearing a hole in the ground with his pacing. The ceremony was to be held at the ranch, under the open sky with the plain stretching endlessly in all directions. Chairs had been arranged in rows facing a simple arbor that Cole and some of the neighboring ranchers had built yesterday. Wildflowers and ribbon decorated everything, transforming Eliza's practical ranch into something magical. People were already arriving when Eliza emerged from the house, more people than she'd expected. It seemed half of Crow's Nest had turned out, along with ranchers from neighboring properties, business associates from Helena, even a few faces she didn't recognize who'd apparently heard about the scandalous wedding and come to witness it firsthand. Sheriff Dawson stood near the arbor, and true to his word, Eliza could see the gun belt under his jacket. Several other men were similarly armed, though they tried to be discreet about it. Her heart clenched at the evidence of their concern, their willingness to stand guard at her wedding because danger might still come calling. Then she saw Cole, and everything else faded to insignificance. He stood at the arbor in Samuel's altered suit, the afternoon sun turning his dark hair bronze at the edges. But it was the expression on his face when he caught sight of her that stole her breath, wonder and love and a vulnerability that made her want to run to him, propriety be damned. Instead, she walked slowly down the makeshift aisle, Mrs. Chen on one side and Rebecca Walsh on the other, both women serving as her attendants. With each step, Eliza felt the weight of the past 15 years lifting, felt the armor she'd worn for so long finally, completely falling away. Cole's hand was warm and steady when she reached him. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're beautiful, he whispered. You're biased, she whispered back. Completely, hopelessly, forever. Reverend Matthews from the church in Crow's Nest, one of the few religious men Eliza could tolerate, cleared his throat and began the ceremony. Eliza heard the words as if from a distance, her entire focus on Cole's face, on the way his thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, on the future they were about to claim. When it came time for the vows, Cole spoke first, his voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowd. Eliza, I came to you broken and bleeding, running from a past I couldn't escape. You gave me shelter when you had every reason to turn me away, gave me work when I had nothing to offer but willing hands, gave me hope when I'd forgotten what it felt like. His grip on her hands tightened. You're the strongest, bravest, most incredible woman I've ever known. You make me want to be better, to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes, to work this land with you, to protect what we're building, to love you with everything I have for as long as I draw breath. Eliza blinked back tears, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Cole, you stumbled into my life and reminded me that my heart wasn't dead, just sleeping. You looked at me and saw not my age or my hardness, but the woman I'd forgotten I could be. You gave me laughter and partnership and a reason to believe in tomorrow. She took a shaking breath. I promise to trust you, to let you carry some of the weight I've borne alone for so long. Promise to build a future with you, not off what I've accumulated, but from what we create together. Promise to love you fiercely, honestly, without reservation for whatever time we're given. Reverend Matthews smiled, genuine warmth in his weathered face. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. Cole, you may kiss your bride. Cole pulled her close and kissed her deeply, thoroughly, in front of everyone assembled. Eliza heard cheers and applause but paid them no mind, too focused on the man in her arms, on the promise they'd just made, on the life they were claiming. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, the crowd surged forward with congratulations. Eliza found herself swept into hugs and handshakes, overwhelmed by the genuine happiness radiating from most of the faces around her. Even Martha Henderson approached, though her smile was tight. I hope you know what you're doing, Eliza. I do, Martha. For the first time in a long time, I absolutely do. The reception unfolded with food and music and dancing under the vast Montana sky. Someone had brought a fiddle, and soon couples were spinning across the packed earth of Eliza's yard. Cole pulled her into the dance, and Eliza let herself be swept away by the music, by his arms around her, by the sheer joy of this moment. Happy? Cole asked as they swayed together. Happier than I knew was possible, Eliza admitted. You? Terrified and ecstatic in equal measure, his smile was crooked. Keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a fever dream. If it is, we're sharing the same dream. She rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady thump of his heartbeat beneath her ear. And I'm not ready to wake up. They danced until the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. Guests lingered, reluctant to let the celebration end, and Eliza was surprised to find she didn't want them to leave either. For so long she'd craved solitude, protection from the world's judgment. Now she wanted to share this happiness, to let people see that love didn't have an expiration date, that second chances were real. Sheriff Dawson approached as twilight deepened, his expression apologetic. I hate to interrupt, but I need to head back to town. Just wanted to say congratulations one more time. Thank you, Tom, for everything. For standing guard, for no thanks needed. He tipped his hat. You two deserve this happiness, earned it the hard way. As he turned to leave, movement caught Eliza's eye. 3 riders emerging from the tree line to the east, their silhouettes stark against the dying light. Her blood turned to ice. Cole saw them in the same instant. His hand went to his side, reaching for a gun he wasn't wearing. He'd left it inside for the wedding. Sheriff Dawson's hand moved to his holster, and across the yard Eliza saw other armed men straighten, alert to the danger. The Kavanaughs. Dutch and Sam. Unmistakable even at a distance. And between them, unexpectedly, Jake. The music died. Conversations faltered into silence as everyone turned to watch the approaching riders. Stay here, Cole said quietly to Eliza. Absolutely not. She moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his. Together, remember? The 3 brothers rode to the edge of the gathered crowd and stopped. Dutch's face was hard, his jaw tight with barely controlled rage. Sam looked mean and eager, his hand resting on his gun. But Jake's expression was torn, conflicted, as if he was wrestling with himself about being here at all. Couldn't resist crashing the party, Dutch said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. Heard you were celebrating. Thought we'd come pay our respects. You're not welcome here, Sheriff Dawson said, stepping forward. This is a private celebration on private property. Turn around and ride out, or I'll arrest you for trespassing. On what authority? Sam sneered. You're out of your jurisdiction, Sheriff. This is McAllister land, not Crow's Nest. On my authority, Eliza said clearly, her voice cutting through the tension. This is my land, and I'm telling you to leave. Dutch's eyes fixed on her, cold and calculating. The famous widow McAllister, or should I say Mrs. Bennett now, quite the celebration for quite the marriage. Older woman, young cowboy, built on the grave of my brother. Built on nothing but our own choices, Cole replied, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline Eliza could feel thrumming through him. Your brother made his choice when he cheated at cards and drew his gun. I made mine when I defended my life. The law's ruled on it, Dutch. It's done. The law, Dutch spat. Bought and paid for by her money, no doubt. Everyone knows the Thorntons have influence. Easy to get a ruling when you've got deep pockets. The ruling was based on witness testimony. Rebecca Walsh stepped forward, her lawyer's training evident in her calm authority. Multiple witnesses, all giving consistent accounts that corroborate Mr. Bennett's version of events. Your brother drew first. That's not opinion. It's documented fact. Facts can be twisted by people with agendas. Sam's hand moved closer to his gun. We know what we know. Our brother's dead, and this killer gets to walk free. Gets to marry into money and comfort while we bury our blood. Eliza felt Cole tense beside her, felt his muscles coiling for action. She squeezed his hand hard, a silent plea to let her handle this. I'm sorry for your loss, she said, and meant it. Losing family is devastating. I know. I buried a husband I loved. But grief doesn't give you the right to terrorize innocent people. Cole defended himself. He didn't want violence, didn't seek it. Your brother forced his hand. Innocent, Dutch laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. That's rich. He killed our blood, and you stand there calling him innocent. The marshal called him innocent, Eliza corrected. The law called him innocent. Multiple witnesses called him innocent. At what point do you accept the truth instead of clinging to a version of events that fits your need for revenge? Jake shifted in his saddle, his expression pained. Dutch, she's right. I told you. Shut up, Jake. Dutch's voice cracked like a whip. You don't get to take their side. Family is family, no matter what the law says. But what if family is wrong? Jake asked quietly. What if we're wrong? The question hung in the air, weighted with years of loyalty and love twisted into something dark. Sam turned in his saddle to stare at his younger brother, betrayal written across his face. You little traitor, Sam hissed. You've been working against us this whole time. I've been trying to stop you from making a mistake that'll get us all killed or imprisoned, Jake shot back. Open your eyes, Sam. Dutch, look around. You're at a wedding, surrounded by armed men, threatening people who have the law on their side. How does this end well for us? It ends with justice, Dutch said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. It ends with more blood, Eliza said firmly. Blood that doesn't need to be spilled. Cole didn't murder your brother. He survived an attack. You can choose to accept that, to walk away and live your lives, or you can choose revenge and all the consequences that come with it. But make no mistake, if you draw those guns, you won't be facing one cowboy. You'll be facing me, the sheriff, and every armed man and woman at this gathering who've chosen to stand with us. As if to punctuate her words, Sheriff Dawson drew his pistol, not aiming it yet, but making his position clear. Around the yard, other men and several women moved their hands to weapons, creating a wall of protection around Cole and Eliza. Dutch looked around at the assembled force, at the faces set with determination, at the odds that had just shifted dramatically against him. Eliza could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, rage warring with survival instinct. This isn't over, he said finally, but the words lacked conviction. Yes, it is. Cole stepped forward, and Eliza's heart leapt into her throat. It's over because I'm making it over. Dutch, Sam, I'm sorry I killed your brother. Truly sorry. Not because I was wrong, but because taking a life, even in self-defense, leaves a mark. I live with that mark every day, but I won't keep apologizing for surviving. Won't keep running or hiding or letting your grief dictate my life." He paused, his voice softening slightly. "Your brother was a cheat and a violent man. Jake's been honest about that. But he was still your brother, and I understand that love doesn't always make sense, doesn't always align with what's right or fair. So I'm offering you this one time, right away. Let it go. Build lives that honor your brother's memory instead of destroying yourselves for revenge that won't bring him back." The silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Eliza held her breath, watching Dutch's face, seeing the war playing out behind his eyes. Jake spoke into the silence, his voice gentle but firm. "He's giving us an out, Dutch. More mercy than we've shown him. Take it, please." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, Dutch's hand moved away from his gun. The rage in his face didn't disappear, but it banked, controlled by an act of will that looked like it cost him everything. "You're a lucky man, Bennett," Dutch said, his voice rough. "Lucky to have people willing to stand with you. Lucky to have married into protection." He looked at Eliza. "Take care of him, Mrs. Bennett, because if he ever stands alone again, if he's ever vulnerable again, we might reconsider this mercy." "He'll never stand alone," Eliza said, absolute certainty in her voice. "That's what marriage means, what partnership means. He's got me, and I've got resources and connections that go far beyond what you're imagining. Come after him again, and you won't just face local law. You'll face the full weight of everything I can bring to bear." Dutch's jaw tightened, but he nodded once, sharp and bitter. He wheeled his horse around without another word. Sam hesitated, looking like he wanted to argue, but finally followed his older brother. Jake lingered a moment longer, meeting Cole's eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for showing more honor than we deserved." "Take care of them," Cole replied, "and yourself." Jake nodded and rode after his brothers, the three of them disappearing into the gathering darkness. The tension broke like a physical thing, and Eliza felt her knees go weak. Cole's arm came around her waist, holding her up, and she realized he was shaking too, adrenaline and relief making them both unsteady. Around them, the guests erupted into noise, nervous laughter, excited chatter, everyone processing what they'd just witnessed. Sheriff Dawson holstered his gun and approached them. "That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever seen," he said. "Probably both," Cole admitted. "They might come back," Dawson warned. "Maybe," Eliza said, "but I don't think so. Dutch wanted revenge, but he wanted to live more. And Jake's going to work on them, I think. Help them see reason." "I hope you're right." Dawson shook Cole's hand. "Congratulations again. You two deserve some peace after all this." As the sheriff walked away, Mrs. Chen appeared with glasses of whiskey for both of them. "Drink," she ordered. "You've earned it." Eliza drank, the whiskey burning warmth down her throat and into her chest. Beside her, Cole did the same, then pulled her close. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good," Eliza replied, her voice muffled against his chest. "Because I love you just as much, and we should be terrified together." The guests gradually began to leave, offering final congratulations and promises to visit soon. By the time full dark settled over the ranch, only Mrs. Chen and Rebecca Walsh remained, helping clean up the last of the celebration. "Go," Mrs. Chen finally said, shooing them toward the house. "This is your wedding night. We'll finish here and see ourselves out." Eliza wanted to protest, wanted to help, but Cole was already pulling her toward the house. And truthfully, she wanted nothing more than to be alone with her husband, to process everything that had happened, to claim this night as theirs. Inside, the house was dark and quiet, lit only by the lamp they'd left burning in the bedroom. Cole closed the door behind them and leaned against it, his eyes finding hers in the dim light. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, testing the name. "Mr. Bennett," Eliza replied, smiling despite the exhaustion pulling at her. "That sounds strange." "Sounds perfect." He crossed to her, his hands gentle as he began unpinning her hair, letting it fall in silver dark waves around her shoulders. "You were magnificent today, the way you faced them down, the way you stood your ground." "I was terrified," Eliza admitted. The whole time I was thinking about how I could lose you, how one wrong word or movement could turn that confrontation into violence. But you didn't show it, didn't back down. Cole's fingers traced the line of her jaw. You saved us, Eliza. Your strength, your refusal to be intimidated, that's what made them walk away. We saved each other, she corrected. Your offer of mercy, your willingness to acknowledge their grief, that gave them a way out that preserved their pride. We did it together. Cole kissed her then, slow and deep, and Eliza felt everything else fade away. There was only this moment, this man, this future they'd fought so hard to claim. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Eliza said, "Help me with this dress. Mrs. Chen laced it so tight I can barely breathe." Cole's fingers were patient as he worked the laces free, his touch reverent as he helped her step out of the silk. Eliza returned the favor, unbuttoning his shirt, running her hands over the scars that told the story of his hard life, the bullet graze that had brought him to her door. They made love slowly, tenderly, taking their time to explore and discover. Eliza had thought she was too old for this kind of passion, but Cole proved her wrong with every touch, every whispered word. He made her feel young and beautiful and infinitely desired. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the sheets, the Montana night vast and starlit beyond the window. Eliza traced patterns on Cole's chest, marveling at the fact that this was real, that this man was now her husband, that the future stretched ahead with possibility instead of emptiness. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his fingers threading through her hair. "That I'm happier than I ever thought possible," Eliza said honestly. "That I can't believe how much my life has changed in just a few months. That I'm grateful you stumbled through my gate that day." "Best stumbling I ever did," Cole pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Eliza, I promise you I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret taking a chance on me." "I could never regret this. Never regret you." She lifted her head to meet his eyes. "We've been through the fire, Cole. Faced down threats and gossip and our own fears. If we can survive all that, we can survive anything." "Anything," Cole agreed, "as long as we face it together." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, safe in the home they'd defended, secure in the love they'd chosen, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The dawn that woke them was gentle, soft light creeping through the curtains. Eliza stirred first, momentarily disoriented, then remembered. Married. She was married to Cole Bennett, and the challenges they'd faced yesterday had ended in survival, in victory, in the Kavanaughs walking away. Beside her, Cole was still sleeping, his face peaceful in the morning light. Eliza watched him for a long moment, committing this to memory. Their first morning as husband and wife, the beginning of the life they'd build together. When he finally woke, his first sight was her face, and his smile was worth every hardship they'd endured. "Good morning, Mrs. Bennett," he said. "Good morning, husband." They lay together as the morning brightened around them, talking quietly about plans for the ranch, about the future they'd shape together. The threats hadn't disappeared completely. They both knew the Kavanaughs might still harbor resentment, might still cause problems down the road, but the immediate danger had passed, and that was enough for now. Eventually, the demands of the ranch pulled them from bed. Cattle needed feeding, horses needed tending, life went on. But as they worked side by side in the morning sun, Eliza felt a peace she'd never known before. She wasn't alone anymore, wasn't bearing the weight of this life by herself. She had a partner, a husband, a future built on love instead of survival. And that, Eliza McAllister Bennett decided, as she watched Cole laugh at something one of the horses did, was worth every moment of fear, every whispered criticism, every challenge they'd overcome. She'd found her second chance, and she was going to hold on to it with everything she had. The weeks following the wedding settled into a rhythm that felt almost too perfect, as if the universe had decided they'd earned a reprieve from struggle. Eliza would wake each morning to find Cole already up, coffee brewing, his quiet movements in the kitchen, a comfort she'd never expected to have again. They worked the ranch together with an efficiency that came from genuine partnership, each anticipating the other's needs, without words. But beneath the surface calm, Eliza couldn't quite shake the awareness that peace was fragile. The Kavanaughs had walked away, but wounds that deep didn't heal overnight. She caught Cole scanning the horizon sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, his hand drifting unconsciously toward his gun belt. 3 weeks after the wedding, a letter arrived. The ranch hand who'd ridden to town for supplies brought it back tucked among the other mail, and Eliza's stomach dropped when she saw the return address. Billings, Montana. Cole was in the barn when she opened it, her hands trembling slightly as she unfolded the paper. The handwriting was rough but legible, each word carefully formed. "Mrs. Bennett," it began, "this is Jake Kavanaugh writing to you. I wanted you to know that my brothers and I have decided to leave Montana. There's work in Wyoming, and Dutch thinks a fresh start might do us all good. Getting away from places that remind us of our brother, getting away from old grudges that don't serve anyone." Eliza's breath caught. She read on. "I won't say my brothers have completely forgiven what happened. That might be asking too much. But they've agreed to let it go, to stop looking backward and start looking forward. I think seeing you two at that wedding, seeing how many people were willing to stand with you, made them realize that revenge would only bring more pain. Your husband showed us mercy when he could have shown us violence. That means something, even to men as hard-headed as Dutch and Sam." The letter continued for another paragraph, Jake explaining that he'd found work on a ranch near Cheyenne, that Dutch was considering going into business with a freight company, that Sam was talking about heading west to California, plans that suggested futures instead of vendetta. "I hope this brings you peace," the letter concluded. "You both deserve it. Thank you for not taking from us what we tried to take from you. Thank you for choosing to break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. I wish you and Cole all the happiness in the world. Sincerely, Jake Kavanaugh." Eliza was still standing in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face, when Cole came in for lunch. He saw her expression and crossed to her in 3 strides. "What happened? What's wrong?" Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. He read it quickly, his expression shifting from concern to shock to something like wonder. "They're leaving Montana," he said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "They're actually letting it go." Jake kept his word. He worked on them, helped them see another path. Eliza wiped at her tears. "We're free, Cole. Really, truly free." Cole pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in the middle of the kitchen, holding each other while relief washed over them in waves. The threat that had shadowed their happiness was finally completely gone. "I need to do something," Cole said after a long moment. "Something to mark this, to honor what Jake did for us." "What do you have in mind?" Cole pulled back, his eyes bright with purpose. "A letter to the ranch where Jake's working. A recommendation. I've got some connections from my years working ranches, men who might be able to help him advance, make something real of himself. It's not much, but it's something." Eliza smiled through her tears. "That's perfect. That's exactly right." They spent the afternoon composing the letter together, Cole's knowledge of the ranching world combined with Eliza's way with words, creating something that might actually make a difference in Jake Kavanaugh's life. When they finished, Eliza added a postscript in her own hand. "If you ever find yourself in need, know that Iron Creek Ranch will always have work for a man of honor and courage. You chose the harder path, Jake. That takes strength most people never find. Eliza Bennett." As the weeks turned into months, life at Iron Creek Ranch blossomed in ways Eliza had never imagined. Cole threw himself into improvements with an enthusiasm that was infectious. Together, they expanded the herd, brought in new breeding stock, modernized systems that Eliza had been making do with for years. But more than the physical changes, it was the atmosphere that transformed. The ranch that had been a monument to survival became a home. Laughter echoed through rooms that had been silent for too long. Music played on the evenings when they were too tired to do anything but sit together on the porch. Cole taught Eliza to dance properly, not the stiff formal dances of her youth, but the loose, joyful movements of someone who danced for the sheer pleasure of it. The town's opinion shifted too, gradually but unmistakably. What had started as scandal became something else, a story people told themselves about second chances and unexpected love. Young women would catch Eliza in town and ask shyly if it was true that you could find love at any age. Widowers who'd given up on companionship started to reconsider. Martha Henderson still pursed her lips in disapproval whenever she saw them together, But even she couldn't maintain her outrage indefinitely. When Eliza donated funds to rebuild the church roof, money that came from her own accounts, clearly marked as separate from anything Cole might have influenced, Martha had the grace to look chagrined. "I may have judged you too harshly," she admitted stiffly one Sunday after services. "You seem happy." "I am happy, Martha. Happier than I ever thought possible." "And Mr. Bennett? He treats you well?" Eliza thought about Cole's gentle patience when she woke from nightmares about losing him, about the way he always made sure she ate when she got too focused on work, about how he'd learned to read her silences, knowing when she needed space and when she needed closeness. "He treats me like I'm precious," Eliza said simply, "like I matter." Martha's expression softened, just a fraction. "Then perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps age has nothing to do with deserving love." It was as close to an apology as Eliza would ever get from Martha Henderson, and she accepted it gracefully. Sheriff Dawson stopped by the ranch one afternoon in early October, bringing news that the Kavanaughs had indeed left Montana. He'd confirmed it through his law enforcement connections. All three brothers were accounted for in Wyoming, working legitimate jobs, staying out of trouble. "Seems like your mercy worked out better than vengeance would have," Dawson said, accepting a cup of coffee from Cole. "Not always the case, but I'm glad it was this time." "So are we," Eliza said fervently. After Dawson left, Cole found Eliza standing at the fence line, looking out over the ranch. The autumn light painted everything gold and amber, and the cattle were dark shapes moving peacefully through the grass. "What are you thinking?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "That I almost let fear win," Eliza said quietly. "When you first arrived, bleeding and desperate, my instinct was to send you away, to protect myself, my carefully ordered life. I almost chose safety over possibility, but you didn't." "No, I didn't." She turned to face him. "And because of that choice, because I was brave enough to be vulnerable, I got this. Got you. Got a life I didn't even know I was missing." Cole's arm came around her waist. "I was thinking about something. About the future." "What about it?" "We've been so focused on surviving, on dealing with threats and challenges, that we haven't really talked about what we want to build. Long term, I mean." He gestured at the ranch. "This place is incredible, Eliza, but it's also a lot for two people. What if we brought on permanent help? Not just hired hands, but people who'd invest in the ranch, become part of something bigger." Eliza felt excitement kindle in her chest. "You mean like a cooperative, shared ownership?" "Something like that. There are good people struggling to make it on their own. Young families, widows, men who've been injured and can't do the heavy work anymore. What if we created a place where they could contribute what they can and share in the profits? Build something together?" It was ambitious, possibly crazy, and absolutely perfect. "Samuel and I always planned to do something like that," Eliza said slowly. "We talked about it in the early years, about creating a community instead of just a ranch. But then he got sick, and after he died, I was so focused on survival that I forgot about the bigger dreams." "Then let's honor those dreams now," Cole said. "Let's build something that lasts beyond us. Something that helps people the way we've helped each other." They spent the winter planning, reaching out to people they knew who might be interested. Mrs. Chen's nephew, recently widowed with 3 small children, jumped at the chance. A former ranch hand who'd lost his leg in an accident but still had valuable knowledge and skills. 2 young couples just starting out who had more ambition than capital. By spring, Iron Creek Ranch had transformed into Iron Creek Community. 8 families working the land together, sharing profits, building houses that dotted the property like a small village. The children brought life and noise and chaos that Eliza discovered she loved. Cole thrived in this environment, his natural leadership an easy way with people making him the heart of the community. But he never let anyone forget that Eliza was the foundation, her vision, her resources, her strength that made it all possible. On their first anniversary, Cole surprised her with a gift. It was a painting commissioned from an artist in Helena, showing Iron Creek Ranch from a distance. But it wasn't the ranch as it had been, isolated and lonely. It was the ranch as it was now, dotted with homes and people, smoke rising from multiple chimneys, children playing in the yards, a community thriving. "This is what you built," Cole said as Eliza stared at the painting with tears in her eyes. Not just with money or land, but with courage. You chose to open your life, your heart, your home, and look what grew from that choice. Eliza couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She just pulled him close and held on, grateful beyond words for this man who saw her so clearly, who loved her so completely. The second year of their marriage brought challenges. A harsh winter that tested everyone's resolve, cattle disease that required quick thinking and hard decisions, conflicts between families that needed mediation. But they faced each challenge together, and the community grew stronger for it. Eliza discovered that she loved mentoring the younger women, teaching them the skills she'd learned through hard experience. Cole became a father figure to the children, teaching them to ride and rope and care for the land. Together they created something that felt like family, chosen family, built on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than blood. Jake Kavanaugh wrote occasionally, brief letters updating them on his life. He'd been promoted to foreman at the Wyoming ranch, had met a woman, was courting her seriously. His brothers were doing well too. Dutch had indeed started a freight business and was making a success of it, while Sam had found work on a ranch in California and was talking about settling down. "We all found our second chances," Jake wrote in one letter. "Thanks to you two showing us that revenge was a dead end and mercy was a beginning. I hope Iron Creek is everything you dreamed it would be." It was more than they'd dreamed, Eliza thought as she read the letter to Cole one evening. It was proof that people could change, that cycles of violence could be broken. The choosing love over fear created ripples that extended far beyond what you could see. On a warm July evening, 3 years after Cole had first stumbled through her gate, Eliza and Cole sat on their porch watching the sunset over the thriving community they'd built. The sounds of children playing drifted on the breeze, smoke rose from dinner fires, voices called greetings across the yards. "Do you ever regret it?" Eliza asked quietly. "Giving up the freedom of the open road? Being tied to one place, one woman, one life?" Cole turned to her, his gray-blue eyes soft with affection. "Not for a single second. Eliza, before I met you, I wasn't free. I was adrift. No roots, no purpose, just moving from place to place because I didn't have anything worth staying for." His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. "You gave me a reason to put down roots, gave me a home, a purpose, a future worth building. That's not a limitation, that's liberation. Even though I'm old enough to be, don't." Cole's voice was gentle but firm. "Don't diminish what we have by reducing it to numbers. You're the woman I love, the woman who saved my life, who fought for our future, who chose to trust me when you had every reason not to. Your age is just a fact, like the color of your eyes or the way you take your coffee. It doesn't define you, and it doesn't define us." Eliza leaned against him, watching the light fade from the sky. "I love you, Cole Bennett, more than I thought possible, more than I knew how to love. I love you too, Eliza, for exactly who you are, for everything you've given me, for the life we've built together." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars began to appear overhead. Somewhere in the community, someone started playing a fiddle. Laughter rang out from one of the houses. A baby cried and was quickly soothed. This was what happiness sounded like, Eliza thought. Not silence or isolation, but the beautiful noise of people living and loving and building futures together. The years that followed brought both joys and sorrows. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep at 83, leaving behind a legacy of kindness that the entire community mourned. New babies were born, and Eliza found herself becoming a grandmother figure to children who weren't hers by blood, but were absolutely hers by choice. Cole's hair started to show gray at the temples, and Eliza teased him that he was finally catching up to her. They grew older together, their bodies showing the wear of hard work and time, but their love deepened with each passing year. When Eliza was 65 and Cole was 39, a journalist from back east came to write about Iron Creek community, fascinated by the cooperative model they'd created. She interviewed both of them, asking pointed questions about their age difference, clearly expecting scandal or dysfunction. Instead, she found a partnership so solid, so clearly built on mutual respect and genuine affection, that her article shifted from exposé to celebration. "The Bennett Legacy," she titled it, writing about how one widow's choice to show mercy to a wounded stranger had blossomed into a thriving community that was changing how people thought about ranch life, about cooperation, about the possibility of second chances. The article brought attention, some welcome, some not. Curiosity seekers appeared, wanting to see the famous ranch and the unlikely couple who'd built it. But it also brought people who needed what Iron Creek offered: refuge, purpose, community. The cooperative expanded to include a school, a shared store, eventually even a small church that welcomed all denominations. What had started as one woman's lonely ranch became a model that other communities studied and emulated. Through it all, Eliza and Cole remained the heart of it, not because they demanded authority, but because their example of trust, of partnership, of choosing love despite all the reasons not to, inspired everyone around them. On their 10th anniversary, the community threw them a celebration that rivaled the wedding itself. Eliza, now 68, stood before the assembled families and felt overwhelmed by the gratitude that welled up in her chest. 10 years ago, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the tremor of emotion, I was a lonely widow who'd convinced herself that life was about surviving, not thriving, that second chances were fairy tales, not reality, that love had an expiration date, and mine had passed. She looked at Cole, standing beside her with silver threading his dark hair and smile lines creasing his face. Then a bleeding stranger stumbled through my gate, and everything changed. Cole taught me that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about knowing when to let someone stand with you. He showed me that love doesn't follow rules about age or propriety or what other people think is appropriate. Love just is when you're brave enough to embrace it. Cole's hand found hers, and Eliza squeezed it tight before continuing. But this community, all of you, taught me something even more important, that the love two people share can be the seed that grows into something bigger. That by opening our hearts to each other, Cole and I also opened the possibility for all of you to find refuge, purpose, family. She looked around at the faces watching her, young and old, weathered and smooth, all united by the choice to build something together. Thank you for being part of this dream. Thank you for proving that community, real community, is still possible. Thank you for being our family. The celebration lasted long into the night, and when Eliza and Cole finally made their way back to their house, the original ranch house that had once echoed with loneliness, they found it filled with gifts, hand-carved furniture from the woodworker, preserves from the families who tended the gardens, a quilt stitched by the women, each square representing a different family's contribution to the community. But the gift that made Eliza cry was simpler, a leather-bound book, empty except for the first page. On it, written in careful script, was a message from all the children. To Grandma Eliza and Grandpa Cole, please write down the story of how you met, so we can tell our children, so they can tell their children, so that everyone knows that love is always possible if you're brave enough. Love, your Iron Creek family. Cole and Eliza looked at each other, both of them with tears streaming down their faces, and laughed. I guess we should start writing, Cole said. Tomorrow, Eliza replied, pulling him toward their bedroom. Tonight, I just want to be with my husband. They made love that night with the tenderness of long practice and deep affection, their bodies familiar territories that still held the power to surprise and delight. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Cole's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Eliza thought about the journey that had brought her here. From grief to isolation to unexpected love, from survival to thriving. From a woman who'd thought her story was over to a woman who'd discovered that the best chapters were still being written. Cole? She whispered into the darkness. Thank you for stumbling through my gate that day. Thank you for being bleeding and desperate and exactly what I needed even though I didn't know it. Cole's arms tightened around her. Thank you for being brave enough to let me stay. For choosing possibility over safety. For teaching me what home feels like. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, safe in the home they'd defended, and the community they'd built, and the love that had made it all possible. The years continued to pass, each one adding layers of richness to the life they'd created. Eliza grew older with grace, her hair going white as snow, but her eyes still sharp, her mind still quick. Cole aged beside her, his body showing the wear of ranch work, but his spirit undiminished. When Eliza was 73 and Cole was 50, they took a rare trip away from the ranch, leaving it in the capable hands of the community they'd raised. They rode out to the spot where Cole had first stumbled toward her gate 15 years earlier, and they sat there together, looking back at Iron Creek. From this distance, they could see how much it had grown. Houses dotted the landscape. Fields stretched in ordered beauty. Cattle grazed peacefully. Children played in the yards, their laughter carrying on the wind. "We did that," Eliza said softly. "Together, we built all of that." "No," Cole corrected gently. "You built the foundation with your strength and your resources and your willingness to take a chance. I just helped you make it bigger." "We built it together," Eliza insisted, "every part of it. And I wouldn't change a single moment, Cole. Not the fear, not the danger, not the uncertainty. Because all of it led to this." Cole pulled her close, and they sat there as the sun climbed higher, warming the Montana plains. They didn't talk about the future anymore. At their ages, the future was uncertain in ways they both understood. But they had the present, solid and real and beautiful. They had each other. They had the community they'd nurtured. They had the knowledge that their love, their choice to be brave, had created ripples that would extend far beyond their own lives. And sitting there in the place where their story had begun, with the whole of Iron Creek spread out before them like a promise kept, Eliza McAllister Bennett felt complete. Not because her life was perfect, but because it was fully lived. Not because she'd never known fear or pain, but because she'd faced both and chosen love anyway. The ranch still demanded work. Storms would still come. Life would continue with all its challenges and uncertainties. But when morning light touched the plains now, when dawn broke over Iron Creek community, Eliza Bennett didn't greet it alone. She greeted it beside the man who taught her that loneliness was a choice, not a destiny. That second chances were real, if you were brave enough to reach for them. That love didn't follow any rules except the ones you made together. She'd been called too old, too proud, too difficult to ever find happiness again. The town had whispered and judged and predicted failure. They'd all been wrong, because here she sat, 73 years old, and absolutely, completely, perfectly loved. Here she sat with a husband who'd chosen her every single day for 15 years and showed no signs of stopping. Here she sat looking out at a community that existed because she'd been brave enough to open her door to a bleeding stranger and wise enough to listen when her heart said, "Stay." The loneliness that had defined her for so long had finally, completely loosened its grip. And in its place was something infinitely better: belonging, partnership, love without conditions or expiration dates. As they rode back to the ranch together, Cole's hand warm in hers, Eliza thought about all the years she'd wasted believing that her story was over. Thought about how close she'd come to sending Cole away that first day, to choosing safety over possibility. She would never make that mistake again, would never let fear dictate her choices or limit her dreams. Because the truth that Iron Creek community proved every single day, was that it was never too late for love. Never too late to choose hope over despair, connection over isolation, joy over mere survival. You just had to be brave enough to open the gate when a stranger came stumbling through. Brave enough to tend their wounds and listen to their story. Brave enough to trust that sometimes the thing that looks like trouble is actually salvation in disguise. And if you were that brave, if you made that choice, the rewards were beyond anything you could imagine. A hand to hold in the darkness. A partner to share the load. A love that transformed loneliness into belonging, fear into courage, survival into a life fully, gloriously lived. Eliza had learned that lesson the hard way, through grief and isolation and years of believing she was beyond such grace. But she'd learned it. And now, riding home beside her husband with their community waiting to welcome them back, she carried that knowledge like a torch, ready to share it with anyone brave enough to listen, anyone who needed to hear that second chances were real and love had no limits except the ones we imposed on ourselves. The sun was setting as they reached the ranch, painting everything in gold and crimson, and Eliza McAllister Bennett, who'd once thought her life was over at 43, smiled at the beautiful chaos of the home she'd helped create and knew with absolute certainty that her story was far from finished. It was just beginning.